Greetings, brothers and sisters, seekers of truth, welcome. Today I speak not just as a descendant, but as a torchbearer of the truth behind my forefather Albert Pike, a man of intellect, of esoteric knowledge, of peace, and most of all, a man wrongly maligned. For over a century, Pike's name has been tarnished by a campaign of slander led by Léo Taxil and weaponized by factions within the Catholic Church. Their goal, to paint Pike in particular as satanic and evil. But what if the truth is not only different, but diametrically opposed to this narrative? Today I'll walk you through a clip that represents this smear, a newspaper article from the period, and 10-minute flood of facts, esoteric, historical, and undeniable. Let's begin by reading the very article that was part of this campaign. High Priestess Kentucky woman, Diana Vaughan, High Priestess, Chevalier-elect, Palladic, Mystic Templar, and with numerous other titles, the jargon of which is too incomprehensible for reproduction, was born in Louisville, Kentucky on March 1, 1864. Her father and her uncle were prominent Luciferians, her father being one of Albert Pike's lieutenants when Pike was sovereign pontiff of the Luciferians in Sanctum Regnum of Charleston, South Carolina. She is the only woman except one, Sophia Walder, who was ever admitted to the highest degrees of the Luciferians. The latter is the woman of whom the devil is supposed to have spoken. In the famous interview, he was said by Diana Vaughan to have had with the late Signor Crispo, Premier of Italy, designating her as one who would become the grandmother of the mother of Antichrist. This interview, which Diana Vaughan described in her book, The Secrets of Hell, was supposed to have taken place on October 18, 1883, in the Freemasons' Lodge in Rome, of which Crispi was a member. In testimony of his prediction with regard to Sophia Walder, a document was drawn up. Diana Vaughan declares at the end of which the devil wrote his title, Sanctus Daemon Primarius Proces, which might be translated First Presiding Devil. His satanic majesty did not write in words, but in symbolic signs, such as a rooster, a three-pronged fire fork, a pair of horns, a caudal appendage, using for that purpose a pen which lay in the lodge room. This and the other writings of Diana Vaughan were suppressed as far as possible and bought up as rapidly as they were published. But a few copies are still in existence, and most of the little that is known of Satanism outside of the members of the secret order has been learned from these stray copies. Vaughan's compact with Satan. These will also die with me, she has written, a secret known only to the Magus Elis of the Luciferian sect. The secret is the compact signed on March 25, 1645, between Satan and my ancestor, Thomas Vaughan, to gain the knowledge of the philosopher's stone, 33 years additional life, and the secret of making gold. Vaughan's name in science and Luciferianism obtained from Cromwell the favor of beheading that noble martyr Laud, the Archbishop of Canterbury. Having soaked up some of his blood, offered it to Lucifer in exchange for a compact, the strangest and weirdest ever entered into between a demon and a human being. Vaughan himself left memoirs which tell the rest of the strange story better than does his descendants. 6 days before the death of Laud, he wrote, I was praying for light after having carefully reread the letter of the sovereign master of the fraternity. I asked God to send me the Prince of Celestial Light, whose instructions I awaited. I saw no apparition, but a voice said to me, a secret partisan of the Pope is about to receive a well-merited punishment. Our God wills that it shall be thy hand which sheds this traitor's blood. You will dip up his blood in a linen cloth, consecrated to the eternal enemy of our God. You will then prepare a compact according to your desires, and upon the day when Christ was conceived in the womb of the Virgin Mary, you will burn this blood-stained cloth and call upon the eternal Lord Lucifer. He will come to thee, he will consecrate thee himself, and he will grant thy request. On the day appointed, I had fasted all day, and for 3 hours after sunset had devoted myself to silent prayer and meditation. At the end of this time, I threw the blood-stained cloth into a brazier, and when it was consumed, I cried out as I prostrated myself to the ground, Lord, Lord, great Lord, deign to appear and consecrate me a magi to your service. Eternal Lord, Lord Lucifer, eternal Lord Lucifer, eternal Lord Lucifer. claimed Astarte for spouse. When I lifted my head, the room was filled with lightning, and deep rumbles of thunder were heard from afar. Suddenly the great Lord stood before me in the third circle inside the triangle. Finally the god said to me, "You will cross the ocean at once, and there you will find the Venus Astarte, who shall be thy wife, and who will live with thee 11 days upon this earth. After which time you shall have a daughter who will bear thy name and mine." Vaughan, according to his own statement, crossed the ocean to America, and among the quote-unquote Indians, a daughter was born to him in the manner that had been promised him. According to command, he left among the Indians the child, who was the first Diana Vaughan. Once the Diana Vaughan of latter days tells us she had the supreme pleasure of seeing the devil himself at Charleston, under the kindly offices of Albert Pike. "He appeared to me just as I had pictured him," she says. "His manly beauty, unforgotten even to this day, is undescribable. I can find no expression adequate to make his imposing and ravishing splendor comprehensible. From his head to his feet, which were alone visible in flesh, unless I except his hands, he was clothed in gold, dazzling gold, whose varying colors rendered his garment still more magnificent." Speaking of herself, Diana Vaughan gives this curious history of her birth. "My conversion and joining God's church is the ending of a diabolical race. In effect, my paternal uncle and myself are the last descendants of the Rosecroix alchemist, Thomas Vaughan. My uncle, older than my father in view of his age, cannot possibly leave a child behind him to perpetrate the name, and I, by joining God's church, have effectually cut off any possibility of its being perpetrated through me. A secret known only to the Magus Elis of the Luciferian sect will die upon the day I am received into a religious life, and that is the compact signed on March 25th, 1645 between Satan and my ancestor Thomas Vaughan, to gain the knowledge of the philosopher's stone and 33 years additional life and the secret of making gold. Thomas Vaughan's name in science and Luciferianism obtained from Cromwell the favor of beheading that noble martyr Laud, Archbishop of Canterbury, and having soaked up some of his blood, offered this blood to Lucifer on March 25th, 1645, in exchange for a compact which is the strangest and weirdest ever entered into between a demon and the human being. The piece of linen which had been dipped in the martyr's blood was burned by my ancestor in homage of Satan. Vaughan did as instructed, and at the proper time Lucifer directed him to cross the ocean at once, where he would find Venus Astarte, who shall be thy wife, and who shall live with thee for 11 days upon the earth, after which you shall have a daughter who will bear thy name and mine. Vaughan obeyed the orders, found Venus Astarte, and 11 days later was born Diana Vaughan, the founders of the American branch of Luciferians. Vaughan, obeying orders from Lucifer, left the child with an Indian tribe and returned to Europe. This child married an Indian chief, and Diana Vaughan, the recently converted Christian, is the descendant of the heavenly marriage. Diana Vaughan's education was conducted by her father and uncle. They were Luciferians. She writes of how a Malachi, a Christian inclination, was exercised from her by the arts of her uncle, and then she minutely describes her final initiation into the highest degree of Luciferianism, and it is the description of her meeting Lucifer that Albert Pike's memory is attached. "I was 25 years, 1 month, and 8 days old when I was first officially presented to Lucifer, that is to say, when I first saw him, who is the so-called rival of God, of Christians, and his eternal superior. 3 days before he had commanded my homage, and on the 8th day of April, 1889, Monday, I offered into the sanctum regnum at Charleston. Miserable date, how I cursed today what over 6 years had been glorious triumph for me. The members of the Cyrene High College had invited me to come to Charleston. I reached there Thursday, April 4th. It is known that Lucifer is reputed to appear at the sanctum regnum every Friday at 3 o'clock. Albert Pike, though gifted with divine bibulation, does not always attend these divine meetings, but this Friday, April 5th, 1889, he was present. I was not present at this reunion. None but the 11 highest chiefs can assist at this weekly meeting. Friday evening, one of the emirates came to tell me that the good God had ordered that I should be present. Friday evening, one of those emeritus came to tell me that the good God had ordered that I should be presented on the 3rd day following, which news filled me with a divine ecstasy. The next day, I started to follow out the program laid out for me by Albert Pike. Saturday and Sunday I partook of but one meal after sundown, consisting of black bread, a plate of blood, highly spiced, a salad of herbs, and pure spring water. No wine was given me. I remained shut up in the room praying and meditating. I was only allowed 3 hours of sleep, and even that sleep was broken into 2 intervals. I retired without undressing at 7, and at 8 was aroused by one of the women guarding me. At 11, I retired to be awakened again at midnight, and my last repose was from 3 to 4 in the morning. During Sunday, the treasurer of the Grand College interrupted my meditations by asking me what medals I had determined to offer toward the triumph of the holy cause. I gave him all I had with me, and it was my first disbursement towards the general propaganda to assist in the establishment of the triangles in less favored regions. Monday, I partook of no repast. To sustain me on my journey, I drank an infusion of hemp seed at 7 o'clock in the evening. 2 members of the Masonic Veteran Association appeared and had me follow them. I was so happy that I staggered, and they were obliged to support me. I remember that I no longer saw anything around me. My mind was filled with the thought that I was about to see the good God face to face. The iron doors of the Sanctum Regnum opened. My 2 companions remained outside, and I heard the voice of Albert Pike saying, "Fear nothing, beloved sister, enter." I was overcome with emotion. My limbs trembled under me, but I repeated that I was not afraid. It was not fear that was paralyzing my strength, and in proof of this, far from the cold perspiration of fear bedewing me, I was burning up with an internal fire. My brain seemed bursting. The 11 first men hastened to me, surrounding me, while Albert Pike led me to a seat in the center of the room, and the doors was closed. They chanted a hymn in a language unknown to me, and then retired, Pike going out last, and as he went, addressing these words to me: "The great hour has arrived, and it will last until midnight. Remain seated during the meditation and keep your eyes fixed on the palladium. You can, however, close them at intervals, in order to better meditate upon the extraordinary favor which is granted to you today. But if the slightest inclination to sleep comes over you, open your eyes, rise and walk about." Suddenly I heard thunder, 3 deafening claps in rapid succession, then 1 single clap, then 2 consecutive ones in an extraordinary violence. Then I felt 5 burning blows in my face, and I saw before 5 spirits, 5 genies of most radiant beauty, floating space above the spot where I had last seen the Baphomet. That terrible monster had disappeared. The 5 spirits were clothed in long robes of dazzling whiteness. Their large wings sustained them in space. They were in a circle, their fingers pointing toward the empty palladium. Finally, a 7th clap of thunder was heard, more formidable than any of the preceding ones. At that moment, I saw Lucifer before me, seated on a throne of diamonds, and there was no human reason to tell me how he came there. It seemed to me that he had always been there, and not Baphomet. Seized with respectful awe, I was about to cast myself at his feet. He restrained me with a majestic gesture. "Remain standing, my beloved child," he said. "Prostration is humiliating, and I never humiliate those I love and who love me." This supreme liar was superb. He appeared to me just as I had pictured him. His manly beauty, unforgotten even to this day, is undescribable. I can find no expression adequate to make this imposing and ravishing splendor comprehensible. For his head to his feet, which were alone visible in flesh, unless I except his hands, he was clothed in gold, dazzling gold, whose varying colors rendered his garments still more magnificent. Picture a coat of mail in golden particles, each particle as large as ordinary pearl, and all these particles in red, green, and yellow gold, mingling, moving, giving to the whole an effect of celestial richness, which the most vivid imagination of our greatest artists could never conceive. Overcome by my emotions of passionate adoration for the beneficent being before me, I felt myself sinking, enveloped in flames. I seemed to sink through space, but I was no longer afraid, for the good God, no longer seated on his throne of diamonds, stood beside me as we floated down and down until we reached a country beautiful and most luxuriant vegetation. And that's the end of this clip that they put out in a newspaper. The propagation was done by the Catholic Church and Léo Taxil. They was at odds with Freemasonry since Pope Clement XII, 1738 papal bull, Eminency. Freemasonry was condemned as a threat to religious and civil order. Why? Because Masonry promotes liberty of conscience, religious tolerance, and the pursuit of truth through reason, not dogma. By the 1800s, the rift had widened. Albert Pike, an intellectual titan and 33rd degree Freemason, authored Morals and Dogma, a tome rich with ancient wisdom, mythological parallels, and esoteric insight. The church saw Pike not as a philosopher, but as a heretic. Who was Léo Taxil? Mary Joseph Gabriel Antoine Joguin Pages, known as Léo Taxil, was a French writer who orchestrated one of history's most infamous hoaxes. Between 1885 In 1897, Taxil published elaborate falsehoods claiming that Freemasons and especially Albert Pike worshiped Satan. He invented characters like Diana Vaughan, allegedly a high-ranking Satanist turned Catholic, who later exposed these supposed Masonic secrets. But Vaughan was a fictional character. In 1897, Taxil publicly confessed at a press conference in Paris that it was all a joke, a satire on Catholic gullibility, but the damage was done. Why was Pike targeted? Albert Pike represented everything the church feared. He advocated for intellectual freedom. He studied ancient Hermetic and Eastern traditions. He taught that Lucifer, the light bearer, was symbolic of Venus, the morning star, not Satan. The Venus-Lucifer connection. In Latin, Lucifer means light bringer, a poetic term for the planet Venus when it rises before dawn. In Isaiah 14:12, the fallen star metaphor references the king of Babylon, not the devil. In esoteric traditions, Lucifer is a symbol of enlightenment, the courageous seeker of forbidden wisdom. Pike knew this and wrote, Lucifer, the light bearer, strange and mysterious, named to give the spirit of light, doubt it or not. Morals and Dogma, page 321. This was not devil worship, it was allegory. The Catholic Church deliberately destroyed it. This was not devil worship, it was allegory. The Catholic Church deliberately distorted it. The Venus-Ishtar-Diana connection. Venus, the planet of love and beauty, was worshipped in many guises. Ishtar, goddess of love and war. Aphrodite, beauty, sensuality. Inanna, celestial queen. Diana, Roman, goddess of the moon and the hunt, linked to occult mysteries. These goddesses embody duality, love and war, fertility and destruction. Venus is not just about tenderness, but also cosmic transformation, often painful, often misunderstood. Sophia Walder and the Yod symbol. Sophia Walder appears in these Taxil narratives as another supposed insider, like Vaughan. Her existence is dubious, possibly invented or exaggerated. In one Taxil illustration, we see a Masonic initiation scene with 3 Hebrew letters, Yod, inside a triangle. Yod is the tiniest letter in the Hebrew alphabet, yet it is the seed of all creation in Kabbalah. The triangle of Yods alludes to supernal triad of the tree of life, Kether, Chokmah, and Bina, crown, wisdom, and understanding, belief, faith, fruition. This image was meant to evoke fear, but it actually reflects profound spiritual ascent, the final deception and confession. Taxil's ultimate confession shocked the world. He laughed at how easily the church was manipulated. I thought I would kill myself laughing at some of the things I said. Yet to this day, anti-Masonic conspiracies rely on his falsehoods. The time has come to end the lie, brothers and sisters, to clear the name of Albert Pike, to reclaim the esoteric truth that has been buried under centuries of fear-mongering. Albert Pike was not a Satanist, he was a mystic, a philosopher, a student of light. His only sin in the eyes of the church was that he dared to think beyond the prescribed boundaries. This is the defense, not just a man, but of truth itself. Thank you for listening. Let light prevail. Now, in preservation of truth, I must address, although the characters are fictional, when they speak of these rituals, the recording of 5 blows to the face. When I was around 7 months old, I was placed in a 5-pointed star, and I was slashed across my face. And I was taken to the hospital. My father said that the gypsies did it. I was taken from my family, put into an orphanage, and put through foster care. Later, I found my mother, who's the descendant of Albert Pike, and I received a lot of different gnosis and knowledge. I was already awakened because I desire within to know thyself due to being taken from my family. So I seen that immediately when she said she felt 5 blows to the face and she was sitting within the symbol. That's exactly what happened to me when I was little. Now, my great-great-grandmother, Rebecca Jane Pike, whose mother was Diana Stenick, and it says Diana Vaughan. So I had to address that and tell that to you. I already have it recorded prior to this reading, when it spoke of him coming to the Americas for Venus Astarte. That's the Moors in the Americas. That's the same ones that Albert Pike was studying. Whether you want to call them Canaanites, Moabites, the Hittite double-headed eagle, one body facing east and west, the empire reaching all the way across the Atlantic Ocean, which is the Scottish Rite's own logos. Phoenicians, Saracens, it's all the Moors. I've already addressed that as well. I leave you in love and peace.